Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda, Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda, Jai Advaita Chandra, Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jai Advaita Chandra, Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. If I can keep that, and maybe if there's a book stand.
Sure.
We could just have a Mangalacharan before we begin from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, if it's possible to put up on the board that everyone can follow. Just put CC Adi Lila, verse 1. The first 14 verses are the Mangalacharan for the book.
Do you believe in the first?
Yes, please. It begins with Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan, Ishan Isha Vadarakam, Tatpakasham Sutat Shakti, Krishna Chaitanya Samjagam. Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami mentions that this Mangalacharana creates auspiciousness and it also fulfills all desires, which is something related to today's verse, which is about respect and how we advance in devotional service through the association of devotees and respecting devotees. Of course, it has I'm giving the positive side of it. Hate to even mention the word, but the word blasphemy comes up, spoiler alert, in the verse today. So the opposite of that is to show respect to Krishna and his devotees, or the opposite direction, the devotees and then Krishna. So, do we have it up? Do I have a book that is marked with the correct verse? Or is this random? Which verse is it?
244.
244. Okay, and then it goes up to... Yikes. Okay, 244. Hearing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled and sat down to eat. The Bhattacharya, with great pleasure, first offered him the prasadam from the Jagannath temple. This is, for context, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was invited to the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and his wife, who cooked for them. And they were a little nervous because of their son-in-law, who was loquacious. At this time, the Bhattacharya had a son-in-law named Amogha, who was the husband of his daughter Sati. Although born in an aristocratic Brahmana family, Amogha was a great fault finder and blasphemous. Amogha wanted to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu eat, but he was not allowed to enter. Indeed, the Bhattacharya guarded the threshold of his house with a stick in his hand. However, as soon as the Bhattacharya began distributing prasadam and was a little inattentive, Amogha came in. Seeing the quantity of food, he began to blaspheme. This much food is sufficient to satisfy 10 or 12 men, but this sannyasi alone is eating so much. As soon as Amogha said this, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya turned his eyes upon him. Seeing the Bhattacharya's attitude, Amogha immediately left. The Bhattacharya ran after him to strike him with a stick, but Amogha fled so fast that the Bhattacharya could not catch him. The Bhattacharya then began to curse his son-in-law and call him ill names. When the Bhattacharya returned, he saw that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was laughing to hear him criticize Amogha. When Sati's mother, the Bhattacharya's wife, heard of this incident, she immediately began to strike her head and chest, saying again and again, "Let Sati become a widow." Seeing the lamentation of both husband and wife, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tried to pacify them. According to their desire, he ate the prasadam and was very satisfied. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu finished eating, the Bhattacharya poured water for the Lord to wash his mouth, hands and legs, and offered him flavored spices, tulsi manjaris, cloves and cardamom. The Bhattacharya then placed a flower garland over Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and smeared his body with sandalwood pulp. After offering obeisances, the Bhattacharya submitted the following humble statement. I brought you to my home just to have you blasphemed. This is a great offense. Please excuse me. I beg your pardon. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, what Amoga has said is correct. Therefore it is not blasphemy. What is your offense? After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left and returned to his residence. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya followed him. Falling down at the Lord's feet, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said many things in self-reproach. The Lord then pacified him and sent him back to his home. After returning to his home, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya consulted with his wife, the mother of Sati. After personally condemning himself, he began to speak as follows. Chaitanya Gosa Ninda Shunila Jaha Haite Tare Vada Koile Hai Papa Prashchite. Chaitanya Gosa Nira. Of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ninda, blasphemy, Shunila, I have heard, Jaha Hoiti, from whom? Tare Vada Koile, if he is killed, Hoi, there is, Papa Prayeshchite, atonement for the sinful act. If the man who blasphemed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was killed, his sinful action may be atoned. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In the Hari Bhakti Vilas, the Hari Bhakti Vilas cites the following quotation from the Skanda Purana concerning the blaspheming of a Vaishnava. In a conversation between Markandeya and Bhagirath, it is said, my dear king, one who derides an exalted devotee loses the results of his pious activities, his opulence, his reputation, and his sons. Vaishnavas are all great souls. Whoever blasphemes them falls down to the hell, known as Maharaurava, accompanied by his forefathers. Whoever kills or blasphemes a Vaishnava, and whoever is envious of a Vaishnava, or angry with him, or whoever does not offer him obeisances, or feel joy upon seeing him, certainly falls into a hellish condition. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Shri Gonita ki jai, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Shri Panchadarba ki jai. Also in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, the Hari Bhakti Vilas 10.33.14 gives the following quotation from the Dwarka Mahatmya. From where? Okay, now you can quote the Dwarka Mahatmya. Mahatmya. In a conversation between Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj, it is said, those sinful people who blaspheme Vaishnava, who are all great souls, are subjected very severely to the punishment offered by Yamaraj. In his Hari Bhakti Sandarbha, in the Bhakti Sandarbha 313, Jiva Goswami quotes this statement concerning the blaspheming of Lord Viṣṇu. Quote, one who criticizes Lord Viṣṇu and his devotees loses all the benefits accrued in 100 pious births. Such a person rots in the Kumbhipaka hell and is bitten by worms as long as the sun and moon exist. One should therefore not even see the face of a person who blasphemes Lord Viṣṇu or his devotees. Never try to associate with such persons. In his Bhakti Sandarbha 265, Jiva Goswami further quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, Nindam Bhagavata Shrinvams Tat Parasya Janasya Va Tato Na Paiti Yasopi Yati Adha Sukritachchuta. If one does not immediately leave upon hearing the Lord or the Lord's devotee blaspheme, he falls down from devotional service. Similarly, Lord Shiva's wife Sati states in Srimad Bhagavatam 4.4.17, Karo Pidaya Niradat Yadakalpa Ishe Dharma Vaitarayashnibir Nribir Asyamane Chindyat Prasya Rushitim Asatim Prabhushched jihvam asun apitato visrujet sadharmaha. If one hears an irresponsible person blaspheme the master and controller of religion, he should block his ears and go away, if unable to punish him. But if one is able to kill, then one should, by force, cut out the blasphemer's tongue and kill the offender, and after that he should give up his own life. I first offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and to all the assembled Vaishnavas. Vanchakalpatarubhascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I noticed if one hears an irresponsible person blaspheme a devotee, then one's own devotional service is diminished. So there's a responsibility that one has to respect Vaishnavas. And of course, we should respect all beings. In the Sri Upanishad, it is said, presumably by Swayambhuva Manu, Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmaivad buddhijanataha tatrako muhukashuka ekatvam anupashita. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani vanupashiti sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tatona vijagupsate. One who sees all living beings as spiritual sparks in quality one with the Lord becomes a true knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him? And yastu sarvani bhutani atmani vanupashiti. Anupashiti means one should follow this system, which is created by great souls who actually see beyond the body. The reason it says anupashiti is because one should imitate such persons and artificially consider every living being to be a pure devotee. As we hear sometimes, a devotee in an exalted state sees everyone engaged in Krishna service except for him or herself. But anupashiti means we should follow the vision of those who understand that beyond the body is the soul, and that Suhrit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, accompanies the soul everywhere. If one is able to respect each body, as Prabhupada gives the term, a tabernacle, which is in one sense a physical object that is used in some religious systems. It's a box, contains the supreme essence, and some religious systems would carry that box wherever they went and set it up and worship it. There's one in I can't remember which airport because we've been through so many, but there's a prayer room in which there's a tabernacle. I finally saw one for myself. You have to go to the airport to find them, I guess. And there people worship. So Prabhupada calls the human being, all living beings, as tabernacles. They're walking tabernacles. Tabernacles were used by nomadic people who would carry that box with them and worship. So the metaphor is that the bodies we see in this world, as per Krishna's observation about the most highly advanced devotees, so they see beyond the external feature of the body, and they see the soul. What's more, they see the super soul accompanying the soul. And therefore, there's no sense of disgust. Vijagupsate in the Sri Upanishad means they're not disgusted with anyone because they see that it's only the external covering that becomes degraded by the three modes of material nature, but the soul within is pristine, and the soul is accompanied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, they respect all beings, whatever vidya vinaya sambhane brahmane gavihastini shuni chaiva shupake cha pandita samadarshina. Krishna, this is a learned person, has knowledge to understand the difference between the soul and the body. Kshetragnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetrishu bharata kshetra gyanam yatach jnanam matam mama. Krishna, this is really this is real knowledge, to see the difference between the body and the field, he calls the body, and the knower of the field. They make a separation. Therefore, there's this sense of respecting all living beings. Nonetheless, those who are Madhya ācāryas are enjoined in the Srimad Bhagavatam by Haviyogendra, Ishvare taradineshu bali sheshu dvisatsucha prema maitri kripopeksha yakuroti samadhyamaha. One should be discriminatory in interacting with the world. Even as we keep this vision of respect or attitude of respect to all living beings, we should still have a view of four categories. One is we should understand the category of Viṣṇu Tattva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and know that our self-interest lies in giving all love and respect to Kṛṣṇa. The next category is the devotees. Adineshu. They are, as we find throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, which one might argue, one would say, oh, it's about Kṛṣṇa, and say, not exactly. It's actually about Krishna's devotees. Take the 7th canto, for example. Oh, this is about Nrsingadev. Well, if you want to use AI and figure out how much time is devoted in the 7th canto to Prahlad Maharaj versus Lord Nrsingadev, you'll find that it's mostly about Prahlad. And throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that the devotees are exalted, as does Kṛṣṇa exalt the devotees. Himself, Mad Bhakta Puja Bhyarika, he mentions in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam to Sri Uddhava, that if you want to do first-class worship to me, then you worship the Vaishnavas. In fact, in the Padatis, it's also enjoined that if a pujari is doing some service and a Vaishnav comes in, then one has every right to stop the puja to Kṛṣṇa, to greet the Vaishnav, make sure the Vaishnav is offered a seat, some refreshment, wash their feet, whatever is necessary to make sure they're comfortable. Then you can go back to your worship. Otherwise, it's not first-class worship. Why? Because Madbhakta Puja Vyadika, Krishna's there, he wants to see that his Vaishnavas, his devotees are worshipped. And we find in the story of Bahulashva and Shrutidev, when Krishna decides to go visit his devotees, he takes with him sages from all over the universe, and invites them to sit down on his chariot and take the ride to Mithila, where he'll meet with Shrutidev and Bahulashva. You remember this story? Say yes.
Yes.
And as they, well, I'll keep it short because it's just to make a point. When Kṛṣṇa and the sages arrive at the home of Shrutidev and Bahulashva, which apparently are near one another, he expands himself into exact same Kṛṣṇa and all the sages as well. And he goes to each one of their homes at the same time. And each one of them feels that Kṛṣṇa's only coming to my house. We know that he's done this many times. And there he's worshipped by the king, Bahulashva, with opulence. Shrutidev, on the other hand, is a sādhu type. He just has simple offerings. He accepts their offerings and is inclined to stay in their homes. And after all, he made the journey all the way from Dwarka to come to visit his devotees. And the specific incident I'm coming to is that when he's at the home of Shrutidev, Shrutidev washes the Lord's lotus feet, sprinkles the water on the heads of all his family members, and then begins to glorify Krishna in his home. Midway, Krishna stops him and says, enough. Stop glorifying me. These sages are in your house. You glorify them. Much is made of this because this is Krishna's heart. Sarvo hridayam mayam, sadhanam hridayam tvaham, madanyate na janati, naha tebhyo managapi. The pure devotee is in the core of my heart, and I am in the heart of the pure devotee. My devotees don't know anything about me, and I don't know anything about them. This is the categorical statement Krishna gives after Ambarīṣa Mahārāja had encountered the sage. What's his name? Durvāsā, who's famous for, one thing he's famous for is eating, and the other thing is that he travels with thousands of disciples. And he's a little gruff. I don't know if you've ever met anybody like that, but I had a godbrother who was gruff. I loved him anyway, but he did eat a lot too. Anyway, he was Durvāsā Muni-esque. And when Durvāsā Muni tried to vanquish Ambarīṣa Mahārāja for a slight offense, which had to do with status, Durvāsā thought, I'm a sadhu, I carry a water pot. No, let me do it the other way. I carry a water pot, therefore I'm a sadhu. He didn't understand the external trappings have nothing to do with it, because Ambarīṣa Mahārāja was pure devotee in his heart of hearts. Even though he was a king, he's glorified by all the ācāryas saying, look, he's living only for Krishna, and he's using everything for Krishna. And he had done a severe austerity, he broke the fast before Durvāsā Muni to please Krishna, and he did it in such a way that it should have been a non-issue, but Durvāsā Muni made it an issue. He tried to kill him, and then the Sudarśana-cakra chased after him. He went to many places to take shelter. Everyone said, sorry. Even then he went to Lord Viṣṇu, who uttered this verse, Sarvo hridayam tvaham. The pure devotees are in my heart. I only consider them. That's my only consideration. And therefore he had to go back to Ambarīṣa Mahārāja and beg forgiveness. So the consideration of the Bhagavatam is that first we worship the Vaishnavas, or we worship the Vaishnavas, we become servants of the servant. Evidence of this is in Prahlad's prayers. We find that Prahlad Maharaj, for whom Lord Nrsimhadeva appeared, for his sake, you can see the contrast. All the demigods, including Brahma, after Lord Nrsimhadeva appeared, had worshipped him with expert prayers. And they were all in Sanskrit, everything perfectly arranged, and the demigods are in the mode of goodness. But Lord Nrsimhadeva was not appeased. So they, headed by Brahma, pushed Prahlad Maharaj towards Nrsimhadeva, whom everyone was afraid of, and said, you try, because he came for you. And a couple of times, several times in his prayers, although he's standing in front of Lord Nrsimhadeva, he mentions that, I just want to serve the devotees. He didn't say, I'll serve you, but he said, Tasmada mushtanubhutam ashogya ayushriyam vibhavam aindriyam avarinshat. Vilulitan urvikramena kala mano panayamam nijabritya parshvam. Tasmada mushtanubhutam ashishogya. He says, after noting that his father had become materially opulent, had lost it all within a moment. Vilulitan means there was reversal. And he says, Therefore, tasmad amush tanubritam ashishogya ayushriyam bibam aindrim avarincha ne chami te vilulitan udavikramena ka latmano panayamam nijabirtam parshvam. Britya means a servant of the Lord. So he says to the Lord that I saw that my father had everything, but he lost it all in a second because of vilulitan. Everything turns on its head in the material world. And whenever you think that you have whatever opulence you have, you're going to lose it. He says, Ne chami te vilulitan uruvikramena, O my Lord Urukrama, who performs great acts. He said, I don't want anything. I don't want any benedictions. I don't want anything to do with the material world. What do you want? He says that just nija britya parshvam. Nija, your britya servants, parshvam, your associates. I just want to serve them. So he's before the Lord and he says, I just want to serve the devotees. And then, evam janam nipatitam brabhavahi kupe kama bikam adiyam prapatam prasanga kritva sat Sudarśana bhagavan grihita soham katam nuvishuje tava britya sevam. Again he says to the Lord that the one who saved me and told me who you are is Narada Muni. Kritva sat Sudarśana. He's the one who purified me. He brought me to this devotional service. Therefore, nija britya safe tasmat. Therefore, I just want to serve him. So this is the direction that the Bhagavatam points us to serve the devotee. So I'm commenting on the verse, Ishvare taradineshu balisheshu dusatsacha. And the other two categories are the innocent and then those who are averse to the Lord. So Havi Yogendra says we should learn those four categories and we should give love to the Lord. We should make respectful friendships with all the devotees. We should try to give as much mercy as we can to those who are innocent and open to it. And 5.1 and above. And we should ignore the envious. So the reason I'm mentioning on this side is because our only hope is worshiping devotees. And it's Krishna's wish that we assume this mood of serving the devotee in order to serve him. So if one then criticizes a devotee, blasphemes devotees, then there's a diminishment of one's ability to worship the Lord. Or it can be destroyed. Destroyed how? Well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives this metaphor, as we all know, in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He talks about how the reason we're able to worship him in the first place, we're able to worship the Lord in the first place, is because we get help from a Vaishnava, who he calls a Vaidya. Vaidya means a doctor. And he says that the soul is wandering everywhere, and the only hope for the soul is to meet a devotee. And he says that the devotees, Brahmanda Brahmate Kon, Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Kṛṣṇa Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij, that when one meets a devotee, that's from whom he gets the seed of devotional service. And then, of course, one waters the seed, it says by Shravanadi Jal, means the water of hearing, chanting, etc. We have a Kumbh Mela going on. And then he says, you have to protect the creeper. When the creeper is young, it's komal, it's very delicate. And therefore he said you should protect it on all sides. Just like if you walk around Govardhan Hill, you'll see people try to plant trees, and they have several structures around the tree to protect from monkeys, and cows, and everything else. I wonder how the creeper gets any light. The young tree, the sapling, gets any light because it's protected on all sides. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu indicates you should protect your creeper like that. And then he says that Vaishnava parada hoy uti hati mata upari vachindre shuki jaya pata. He says that if you blaspheme devotee, then it's what he calls the mad elephant offense, or we call it the mad elephant offense. What he's saying in the metaphor is that if you have a garden and then you let an elephant into it, your garden's not going to be the same. What to speak of, it's a mad elephant, and if you've ever seen a mad elephant on YouTube, they flip over cars and smash little huts as they're going along, just out of spite or because they lost their cool. And when they get into a garden, they smash everything. So he gave that analogy to warn everyone to be vigilant not to blaspheme devotees. Because shuki jaya pata means that the creeper then gets smashed and it dries up and shrivels and then it dies. So he warned to be very, very careful. So these verses that Prabhupada quotes about blasphemy are severe. Yes or no?
Yes.
And after I heard the verse a couple times, I was doing my puja and Shachi very kindly read me this verse a couple times so I could get it going in my mind. And I asked her afterwards, when it mentioned so many things about how you should cut out the tongue of the blasphemer and then kill yourself. I said, Sachi, what do you think of it? What does it mean? And she said, better not to blaspheme devotees. And that's what it means. Otherwise, I mean, cutting out someone's tongue is probably very difficult. And it sounds a little, well, it's severe. What to speak of then killing yourself afterwards. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't approve of suicide, neither did Prabhupada, so, well, didn't mind when Chota Haridas. But it's not a good idea to blaspheme devotees. And we don't have to. Well, we have Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, who sets an example for one side of the spectrum, where he categorically said that if somebody's a Vaishnav of any kind, then I won't criticize. Because after all, they're somehow engaged in devotional service. And there's also Krishna's direct statements about devotees, where he says, Apichet Sudarācharo, Vajate Mamananya Bhak, Sadhur Eva Samantagya Samyag Vyavasito Hisa. If somebody's intention is to be a devotee, but does something that is worldly, Sudarācharo means it's really not great. Euphemisms. It's horrible. Still, you should respect the person for their determination to continue. Caveat. If that's the case within a community, that somebody does something abominable, it doesn't mean that we don't do due process. Just means we should respect that Kṛṣṇa can purify anyone. After all, Ashvatthama is due up as the next Vyasadeva. And Ashvatthama, well, I won't go into it. You all know what he did. Don't even want to talk about it. But he's up to be the next Vyasada. So anybody can rise in due course of time. That's what Kṛṣṇa is saying. If they have the intention to go on serving, then Supadamulam bhajata priyasya taktanya bhavasya hare priyeshaha. Vikarma yachot patitam katanchid dhunoti sarvam hridisani vishta. Krishna says in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, if someone makes a big mistake, vikarma yachot patit, somehow or other they do vikarma. He says if they continue doing devotional service, then all take care of it from within the heart. So, I'd also note that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't take this seriously in the context. The Sarvabhaumacharya's son-in-law had uttered these harsh words towards him irresponsibly. He was uncontrolled. Afterwards, he becomes ill, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes and helps to bring him back to Krishna consciousness, or into Krishna consciousness. But he didn't take it seriously at the time because he didn't want to make Sarvabhaumacharya and his wife more distraught than they were. I better take reflections and questions because the time may be over and people are walking out. Okay. Please. And if we can be adroit with passing on the microphone, then we'll get more time.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for a nice class. So you mentioned that we should discriminate between different types of people, and so that means we have to see like on what level we are. That means we have to see their faults also. So how do we avoid blasphemy? Because in this verse it seems like just seeing what a person is doing is also blasphemy. Because yeah, he just said Lord Chaitanya.
Could you just ask the question in one sentence?
How do we discriminate between people without seeing their faults?
Discriminate people without seeing their faults? Well, that's not what we're being asked to do. We may see their faults, but we may understand, as per Krishna's instruction in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that if they're sincere and they're continuing the devotional service, the faults will be overcome in due course of time. That's what apiche sudaracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak means, and that's what swapadamulam bhajata priyasya means, that Krishna will rectify the person in due course of time. If they have faults, there's another way to interact with the world and with people, and that is to consider one's own faults. As we may be at a certain level and somebody may be at another lower level with faults that they're trying to overcome. We have to remember where we came from. In fact, Prabhupada writes a purport to that effect, where he says every one of us should remember where we came from. He says every one of us. He said remember where we came from. Because you might say, who let that guy in here? So I go, who let you in the first place? We're all being given a dispensation by Krishna. So we should give dispensations to others. If they have faults and they're sincere, they go on. Generally, Prabhupada was lenient with sensual fall downs. Philosophical fall downs he found more consequential. Therefore, he would separate people until they were rectified philosophically because he didn't want them contaminating anybody else. And if they were belligerent, if people were belligerent or rejected Prabhupada, then Prabhupada, he let them go. Because it's not our business to foster and take care of people who are blasphemers. So we should be careful. Anyway, the first answer is what I gave. We should see that their faults will be overcome if they're sincere and they continue in devotional service. Yes?
The idea of stopping an arti when a Vaishnava comes in, who's considered that type of Vaishnava?
Well, Prabhupada.
Yes, I understand him.
Yeah, one has to consider context. And most devotees nowadays, if you came in and stopped the artik, they would become embarrassed and disturbed that you stopped the artik for them. But when the ācārya comes, or someone who has a stature, and I didn't necessarily mean stop the artik, but if one's engaged in deity service, and Vaishnav comes, and let's say there's nobody else to take care of them, then one should do it. That could also be, if a pujari is there, there's possible scenarios around ISKCON where there's not much going on in the temple, and then a guest comes, and the pujari is engaged in doing deity worship, and if someone diverted their attention in an appropriate amount of time to make sure the person was oriented to the temple and then went on serving the Lord. This is also could be a consideration that we're there to minister to souls, and if they come and it's like, don't sit there and don't stretch your feet, and by the way, you're offensive. It's not our mode. It's to accommodate people and help them come up. And then, of course, in any community, other than worshiping, besides just in the times of worshiping the deity, if we're doing other things and an exalted devotee comes up, we should stand up to show honor. It's very, it's edifying for the whole community when there's a sense of that there's some that are more advanced than others by seniority and by practice and so forth. And I find when there's this etiquette of showing respect to seniors, as is recommended, Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta dikshasti chet pranatibishta bhajantamisham shushushaya bhajana vignamanam yanmanya nindari shunya hridamipsita sangalabhya. This is Rupa Goswami's suggestion that we see this hierarchy, even for those who say Hare Krishna. It could be somebody who's deranged on the street. We had yesterday, we were down in Watford, or up in Watford, or whichever direction it is, and we were distributing books. And there was who was that guy who was with me? And I can't remember which sort of person he was, but I asked him, he didn't want the book, but I asked him if he would chant the mantra. And he said, do you remember that? He goes, no, I'm not going to chant Hare Krishna. And all the devotees are like, okay. So he says that Giritam Manasa, if you hear him say it, then there's those who have taken a vow to chant Hare Krishna, you should respect them. That's not ordinary. And then there's those who become advanced to the point that nindari shunya, they're free from the propensity to criticize others. You can tell that they don't have the propensity anymore. And even if it comes up, they bring it back. I just noticed the other day when we were reading about Vidura, when he's talking to Uddhava, and they're reminiscing about great devotees. And he remembers Akrura. Can anybody think of anything Akrura did in his life? He's done lots of stuff. But the only thing that he brought up in that conversation, which was in the mood of glorifying devotees and the holy places, was that Vidura had fallen on the ground when he came to Vrindavan and offered prayers. I mean, he could have thought of the Shamtaka jewel, and I won't go into any of the details. But he didn't say that. He didn't try to balance it out to show that he just glorified him. He overlooked the faults, if there were any. And so does Kṛṣṇa. It's an enigmatic story about Akrura and how he gets implicated. But Kṛṣṇa still loves him. Anyway, yeah, it's etiquette should be there, and it should be from realization of how dear the devotees are to Kṛṣṇa. We have 5 minutes left?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to bring out more? Because I just gave such a brief. Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Maybe.
Hare Krishna. Sometimes you see on internet, that everyone has a pity story to tell. I mean, within his God. Not everyone, but there is a sense that devotees they're being victimized by something, or some offenses. I was wondering if a senior devotee he begs for forgiveness, but he doesn't get it from the receiver due to their lack of mercy or whatever. How do you get absolved? Because Krishna, he washes his hands. He doesn't get involved in that. How do you get purified by an accidental blasphemy towards, let's say, a neophyte, or towards a devotee who doesn't forgive you? Because there's a lot of that going on.
Well, you have to see individual cases to comment on it. Because a lot, and just the general idea, the malaise that takes place because of the forum that's a little impersonal, where people feel okay to put things out, and maybe they're lonely, and they like attention. It's not an ideal forum for finding heart-to-heart discussions and forgiveness and so forth. And there's always a sense there that things are on display, so it may not be helpful to try to have a meaningful conversation with somebody through texting. In fact, I think it's well known that if you have a relationship, you shouldn't break it off by a text, isn't it? How did you find out? Well, they texted me. That's considered low class. So better, we take time to resolve issues by meeting with devotees. Dadati pratigranati, bring a gift, heart to heart. I've seen it in management. There have been seemingly intractable differences between two devotees or two parties that have gone on for around 20 years, let's say. And then when someone gets a brilliant idea, it's like, why don't we meet and talk instead of texting? It gets resolved. I was once part of a mediation because I was invited to it by the person for whom the mediation was being held was a little estranged from ISKCON, and you had to choose 3 people on one side, 3 people on the other side, and I got chosen. I was supposedly anyway, whatever it was. My observation was, the mediation was there were differences of opinion, and everything got resolved at prasadam time. I was amazed, and it reminded me of Kṛṣṇa when everyone was fighting and then they get together and it's like, hey, would you like a samosa? So we have to, it's a very personal thing. People have it in their hearts. So the more we strive to overcome differences by trying to have clear communication with people, the more strength we have in our community. And that goes for families, which is kind of a community. They have something in common, they're all related, or a small group, or a large group. Whenever we take the trouble to try to resolve differences by being very personal, meeting together, ishtagoshti, discuss it, if necessary, with others there to help mediate, it's the biggest victory we can have. It's possible to have large groups of people, and then there's a sense of tension because there are unresolved issues. And there will always be unresolved issues. I'm not advocating for utopia. Nor did Prabhupada. Prabhupada didn't, therefore I don't. And there's a way in which, however, when we have this ethos that we consider most valuable our relationships, and we take time to try to overcome them by meeting personally and having prasadam and discussing it for as long as it takes. Sometimes it takes a long time to overcome issues, even personal issues. If someone has mental strain and meets with a psychotherapist, where's our psychotherapist? Then it may take weeks, months, years to overcome it, but it's worth it. So we should also do that and be very considerate. Just one last point about the medium of the internet. I noticed that the phenomena of road rage. I don't know if you get it here in England because everyone's so nice. But Americans are generally uncouth and they like to resort to violence. And I noticed that it's possible to have such altercations because of the impersonal medium of driving. You're in a car, you're not sure who's in the other one, you just see a big thing coming at you and you think, damn that person, I wish they would die. And then if you found out actually it was your mom, you'd change your mind. And in the same way, when we find out who other people are, who are so-called enemies, and Kṛṣṇa says in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, don't become the enemy of your enemy. And Kaviraj Goswami repeats it at the end of Madhya Lila. That's our culture. So we have to be aware of what pleases Kṛṣṇa. And we have to go out of our way to try to resolve differences and also overcome the tendency to blaspheme people. And we should avoid it ourselves in all cases. And then we'll be on the safe side. And the last statement I'll make is it's fully authorized to go to as far to that side of the spectrum of avoiding blaspheming devotees for any reason because of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. And there's a little form you can fill out if you'd like. They'll give it to you out in the lobby. It said, I swear off blaspheming Vaishnavas for any reason. And you can check the box and then you can sign it. And then you're free. You don't have to ever do it again. Okay? Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Gauritai, Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda, Shri Shri Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman, if you so desire, please give us the quality of Nindadi Shunya, that we may lose the propensity to criticize others. And may we always resolve our differences in a very personal, authorized way to please the Lord. And may our community grow stronger by this ethos, and may we please your lordships in that way. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone who agrees with this very long prayer, in whole or in part, please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And now before I say Vanchakalpadurvāscha, we have a free gift for all our friends. Vanchakalpadurvāscha kripasnave vachapatitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavim. I hope it's something you can use. Okay, Nirkula is in charge of the women's side, and I'll take care of all the men.